The discovery. Dr. Nira Vector's six-fingered hands trembled as she stared at the holographic display. The genetic analysis she'd been running for the past 3 cycles had finally completed, and the results defied everything she thought she knew about evolutionary biology. "This can't be right," she whispered, her slender frame hunched over the console of her laboratory aboard the Haldraxian science vessel Eternal Inquiry. The blue light from the display cast eerie shadows across her silvery skin and reflected in her large pupil-less eyes. She had been tasked with a simple mission: analyze human DNA for weaknesses that the Haldraxian Dominion could exploit if these newcomers to the galactic stage proved troublesome. It was standard procedure for the Dominion whenever they discovered a new spacefaring species. First, assess their biology for vulnerabilities. Second, establish diplomatic relations. Third, determine their usefulness to the Dominion. Humans had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel, and they were expanding rapidly from their home system. The Dominion scout ships had been observing them for nearly a decade, collecting samples covertly from colonies and outposts. Nira had been analyzing those samples for months now, cataloging the usual information: vulnerability to specific toxins, environmental limitations, reproductive bottlenecks. But what she found instead sent cold ripples down her spine. The central computer pinged, demanding confirmation of the results. Nira hesitated, then pressed her palm against the authentication panel. "Computer, reanalyze the human DNA samples. Check for contamination or processing errors." "Acknowledged," the AI responded. Secondary analysis commencing. Nira paced the laboratory, her long legs carrying her in rapid circles around the central analysis chamber. The laboratory was her domain, a temple of science that she had designed to her exact specifications. Every tool, every machine was precisely where she needed it, creating an environment of perfect efficiency. But now, the order she had so carefully constructed felt like it was unraveling. The walls of the lab were lined with sample containment units, each holding biological material from hundreds of species. The human samples, blood, tissue, hair, were secured in a specialized unit at the center of her workspace. She'd been analyzing them for months now, and yet somehow missed what now seemed glaringly obvious. Secondary analysis complete, the AI announced. No contamination detected. No processing errors found. Results confirmed with 99.98% confidence. Nira returned to the display, her silver face tight with concentration. The results hadn't changed. Human DNA contained sequences that shouldn't exist. Not in a species that had evolved on a relatively unremarkable planet orbiting an unremarkable star. Not in a species that had only achieved spaceflight within the last few centuries. And certainly not in a species that, by all accounts, appeared to be nothing more than standard-issue bipedal mammals. Yet there they were, genetic markers that resembled those found in the ancients. The ancients were the stuff of legend, a species said to have seeded the galaxy with life billions of years ago before mysteriously vanishing. Most scientific minds in the Dominion considered them nothing more than myth, though evidence of their technology occasionally surfaced on worlds throughout the galaxy. But if these markers in human DNA were genuine, it would mean that humans weren't just another primitive species stumbling into the galactic community. They were something else entirely. The laboratory door slid open with a soft hiss, and Commander Zolax entered. His massive frame nearly filled the doorway, his exoskeleton armor clicking softly as he moved. The commander's face was a rigid mask of professionalism, but Nira knew him well enough to recognize the tension in his posture. "Dr. Vector," he said, his voice a low rumble, "the High Council is requesting your preliminary report on the humans. Have you identified exploitable weaknesses yet?" Nira's 4 hearts beat rapidly in her chest. She could lie, tell him what he wanted to hear. The humans were just another species, vulnerable to the right pathogens, the right environmental pressures. But the truth burned in her mind. "Commander, I need more time," she said carefully. "The human genome is unusual. It requires further study." Zolax's eyes narrowed. "Unusual how?" Nira hesitated. Revealing too much could be dangerous, not just for her career but potentially for the humans as well. If the Dominion learned that humans carried ancient genetic markers, they might decide to eliminate them entirely rather than risk whatever abilities those markers might confer. Their immune system is remarkably adaptive, she said, which was true but not the whole truth. And their genetic diversity is substantial. I need more time to identify reliable vulnerabilities. The commander studied her for a long moment. The Council is growing impatient, Doctor. The humans have established a new colony on the edge of Dominion space. We need your findings before they expand further. I understand, Commander. Give me 2 more cycles. I'll have something by then. After Zolax left, Nira locked the laboratory door and returned to her analysis. The human genetic sequences contained something she'd never seen before, portions that appeared to be dormant but had the potential for expression under the right conditions. These weren't just random mutations. They seemed purposefully designed, as if someone had hidden capabilities within human DNA that could be awakened. But awakened to what purpose? Nira worked through the night cycle, analyzing the dormant sequences, comparing them to genetic databases from across the galaxy. The more she discovered, the more convinced she became that humans weren't what they appeared to be. The next morning, she received a priority message from the High Council. Her access to the human samples was being revoked. Another scientist would take over the analysis. Panic surged through her. Had Zolax suspected something? Had he reported her hesitation to the Council? She had less than 1 cycle before she would be forced to surrender her research. Not enough time to complete her analysis, but perhaps enough to secure the most critical samples and data. Nira worked frantically, copying the genetic sequences into a secure data crystal and selecting key biological samples to smuggle out of the laboratory. She had colleagues on Nexus Station who might help her continue her research unofficially. Just as she finished securing the last of the samples, the laboratory door opened again. This time, it wasn't just Commander Zolax who entered, but also High Counselor Drek, one of the most powerful political figures in the Dominion. Dr. Vector, the High Counselor said, his voice deceptively soft. Commander Zolax tells me you found something significant in the human genome. Nira's blood ran cold. I've found anomalies that require further study, Counselor. Show me, Drek commanded. With trembling hands, Nira brought up the display of human DNA alongside comparative samples from other species, including the fragments of ancient genetic material recovered from archaeological sites across the galaxy. As you can see, Counselor, there are sequences in human DNA that bear striking similarities to ancient markers. Drek's expression remained impassive, but his eyes widened slightly. Are you suggesting these humans are descendants of the ancients? Not descendants, Nira clarified, but they may have been modified by them. These sequences appear dormant, but they exist in every human sample I've analyzed. Drek was silent for a long moment, contemplating the display. This information does not leave this room, he finally said. The implications are too significant for general dissemination. But, Counselor, this could revolutionize our understanding of. This could destabilize the entire Dominion if handled improperly, Drek interrupted. These humans, if they carry ancient genetic material, they could pose a greater threat than we imagined. Or they could be invaluable allies, Nira argued. We don't know what these sequences do, what abilities they might confer. Precisely why this research must continue under the strictest security protocols. Drek turned to Commander Zolax. Seal this laboratory. No one enters or exits without my direct authorization. And Dr. Vector? Zolax asked. Drek studied Nira with cold calculation. She stays. She will continue her research, but under supervision. I want to know everything about these genetic markers, what they do, how they can be activated, and how they can be neutralized if necessary. As Drek and Zolax left, Nira returned to her console, her mind racing. She had hoped to protect the humans by concealing her discoveries, but now she was being ordered to find ways to potentially neutralize whatever gifts the ancients might have left within them. The situation had become far more complicated and dangerous than she had anticipated. But one thing was certain: humans were no ordinary species. They carried within them genetic potential that could change the course of galactic history. And Nira was determined to discover exactly what that potential might be. The Awakening. 3 months after her discovery, Nira found herself working under increasingly restrictive conditions. Her laboratory had been moved to a secure facility on Haldrax Prime, the Dominion's capital world. Guards were posted outside her door around the clock, and every piece of data she generated was immediately transmitted to High Counselor Drek's personal server. But Nira had managed to keep one crucial secret: she had established contact with humans. It had begun as a desperate measure. The Dominion was proceeding with plans to contain what they now viewed as the human threat, and Nira knew she couldn't stop them alone. Using a quantum entanglement communicator she had smuggled into her laboratory, she had reached out to a human scientific outpost on the edge of explored space. Dr. Maya Chen, a geneticist from Earth's United Science Directorate, had responded to her initial transmission with skepticism, but had gradually come to trust Nira's warnings. "They're planning something soon," Nira said now, speaking quietly into the communicator as she monitored the corridor outside her lab through the security feed she had hacked. "Counselor Drek has assembled a military task force. I believe they intend to isolate your colonies one by one, starting with New Horizon." "Based on what?" Maya's voice crackled through the quantum link. "Because we might have some ancient DNA that no one understands." "It's more than that now," Nira said. "I've made progress understanding those dormant sequences." She transmitted her latest findings to Maya. Data showing that the dormant sequences in human DNA appeared designed to activate in response to specific environmental triggers, particularly certain types of radiation found near the galactic core. "These sequences," Nira explained, "they're like locked doors. And I believe I've found the key." "A key to what?" Maya asked. "To abilities your species hasn't begun to tap. Enhanced cellular regeneration, heightened sensory perception, and possibly, though this is still theoretical, forms of energy manipulation that resemble what ancient texts describe as psychic abilities." There was a long silence on the other end of the communication. Finally, Maya spoke again, her voice cautious. "You're saying humans have the potential for what? Telepathy? Telekinesis? That sounds like science fiction, Nira." "The distinction between advanced science and what less developed cultures perceive as magic is often merely a matter of understanding," Nira countered. "The ancients understood principles of quantum mechanics and energy manipulation that even the Dominion hasn't fully grasped. If they encoded that knowledge into your DNA..." The security feed suddenly showed movement in the corridor. Commander Zolax was approaching, accompanied by 4 armed guards. "I have to go," Nira said quickly. "They're coming. Maya, whatever happens, you need to warn your people. The Dominion fears what you might become more than what you currently are." The laboratory door slid open just as Nira disconnected the quantum link and slipped the communicator into a hidden compartment beneath her workstation. "Dr. Vector," Zolax said without preamble, "High Counselor Drek requires your presence at the Strategic Command Center." "May I ask why?" Nira said, struggling to maintain her composure. "The humans have detected our observation vessels near their colony on New Horizon. They've sent diplomatic communications requesting explanation. The High Counselor wishes to discuss containment options." "Containment," the Dominion's euphemism for neutralizing potential threats. "Of course, Commander." As they traveled through the gleaming corridors of the government complex, Nira's mind raced. The Dominion was moving faster than she had anticipated. If they launched a preemptive strike against human colonies, the resulting conflict could devastate both species. The Strategic Command Center was a vast chamber dominated by a holographic display of the galaxy. High Counselor Drek stood at its center, surrounded by military advisors. He acknowledged Nira with a curt nod as she entered. Dr. Vector, explain to the Council exactly what these dormant genetic sequences could mean if activated. Nira hesitated. What she said next could determine the fate of humanity. The sequences are complex and not fully understood. She began carefully. While they share markers with ancient DNA, we cannot predict with certainty what abilities they might confer if activated. But you've theorized possible outcomes, Drek pressed. Theoretical models suggest possible enhancement of existing human capabilities, improved cellular regeneration, enhanced sensory perception, possibly increased intelligence, and the more extreme possibilities. Drek's eyes narrowed. Nira took a deep breath. Some models suggest potential for energy manipulation at the quantum level, what primitive cultures might interpret as psychic abilities. A murmur ran through the assembled counselors. So these humans could develop abilities similar to those attributed to the ancients in historical records, Drek said. Abilities that could pose a significant threat to Dominion security. That's a vast oversimplification of the data, Nira objected. These sequences might never activate naturally. And even if they did, there's no evidence humans would use such abilities aggressively. We cannot afford to take that chance, Drek said dismissively. The Council has reviewed your research and come to a decision. The human colonies will be quarantined. Their faster-than-light capabilities will be neutralized until we better understand the threat they pose. Quarantined. Nira echoed in disbelief. You're talking about imprisoning an entire species. We're talking about protecting the Dominion, Drek countered. Before Nira could respond, a junior officer rushed into the chamber. High Counselor, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from the human colony on New Horizon. The holographic display shifted, zooming in on the colony. Strange energy patterns were emanating from the settlement, unlike anything Nira had seen before. What are they doing? Drek demanded. The answer came not from his officers, but from the display itself as it suddenly flickered and resolved into the image of a human woman. Dr. Maya Chen. This is Dr. Maya Chen of the United Science Directorate, she announced, her voice echoing through the command center. We are aware of your presence near our colonies and your plans to contain us. We have received information about your concerns regarding our genetic makeup. How is this possible? Drek hissed. They shouldn't have this communication capability. Maya continued. We propose an alternative to conflict. We invite a Dominion delegation to New Horizon for diplomatic talks. We have information about the ancients and their intentions that you may find illuminating. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. All eyes turned to Nira, including Drek's furious gaze. You've been communicating with them, he accused. I have, Nira admitted, straightening her posture. Because I believe cooperation offers better prospects than conflict. These humans aren't a threat. They're an opportunity. An opportunity to finally understand the legacy the ancients left behind. You've committed treason, Commander Zolax growled, reaching for his weapon. Wait, one of the other counselors interrupted. Perhaps we should consider their invitation. If they truly have information about the ancients. A debate erupted among the council members, some calling for immediate military action, others arguing for diplomatic engagement. Drek finally raised his hand for silence. We will send a delegation, he decided, but we will also position our fleet in striking distance. At the first sign of threat, we will neutralize the colony. 2 days later, Nira found herself aboard a diplomatic vessel approaching New Horizon. Despite being formally charged with treason, her expertise had made her inclusion in the delegation necessary. Commander Zolax kept her under close watch, his hand never far from his weapon. The human colony came into view, a sprawling settlement of gleaming structures nestled in a verdant valley. As their ship landed on the designated platform, Nira saw Dr. Maya Chen waiting to greet them, flanked by other humans in formal attire. Welcome to New Horizon, Maya said as they disembarked. We appreciate your willingness to engage in dialogue. Let us dispense with pleasantries, Drek said coldly. You claim to have information about the ancients. We do, Maya confirmed. But first, we'd like to show you something. She led them to a massive structure at the colony center. Inside was an artifact unlike anything Nira had ever seen, a crystalline monolith that pulsed with inner light, covered in symbols that resembled those found in ancient ruins across the galaxy. We discovered this beneath the colony site, Maya explained. It's been here for approximately 3 million years, according to our dating methods. An ancient artifact, Nira breathed, moving closer despite Zolax's warning hand on her arm. More than that, Maya said. It's a repository of knowledge, and it responds to us, to humans, in ways it doesn't respond to other species. To demonstrate, she placed her hand on the monolith's surface. The symbols began to glow more brightly, and holographic displays erupted from the crystal, filling the chamber with images of stars, planets, and DNA sequences. The ancients didn't just disappear, Maya explained as the images swirled around them. They evolved. They seeded worlds across the galaxy with life, including Earth. But they did something special with humans. They encoded portions of their knowledge, their potential, into our DNA. Why? Drek demanded, his voice hushed despite himself. Insurance, Maya said simply. Against extinction. Against forgetting. They knew that eventually they would evolve beyond physical form, but they wanted to ensure their knowledge wouldn't be lost. And now that knowledge is awakening in you, Nira said, understanding dawning. Maya nodded. Exposure to the monolith has accelerated the process. We're beginning to access abilities that were dormant in our genetic code, not as weapons, but as tools to help us better understand the universe the ancients left behind. For hours, the humans demonstrated their emerging abilities, enhanced healing, heightened perception, and most remarkably, the ability to interface directly with ancient technology through thought alone. Gradually, even the skeptical members of the Dominion delegation began to understand. Humans weren't a threat to be contained. They were heirs to the ancient legacy, just beginning to discover their inheritance. The ancients left similar repositories on dozens of worlds, Maya explained. They contained knowledge that could benefit all spacefaring species. Knowledge about sustainable energy, medicine, faster than light travel. Technologies far beyond what any of us have developed independently. And you would share this knowledge? Drek asked, his earlier hostility giving way to cautious interest. With partners, yes, Maya said firmly. Not with those who would seek to control or exploit us. As the diplomatic discussions continued into the night, Nira found herself standing alone with Maya on a balcony overlooking the colony. You risked everything to warn us, Maya said softly. Why? Nira gazed up at the stars. Because science should illuminate, not threaten. Because knowledge should be shared, not hoarded. She turned to look at the human scientist. And because I believe the ancients chose your species for a reason. I want to understand what that reason was. Maya smiled. Then help us. There's a place for you here, working alongside us to unravel the ancients' legacy. As dawn broke over New Horizon, a new understanding was reached. The Dominion would not seek to contain humanity but would instead establish formal diplomatic relations. Joint research initiatives would be established to study ancient artifacts and the dormant potential in human DNA. And Nira Vector, once charged with finding human weaknesses, would lead the Dominion's scientific cooperation with humanity, exploring not what made humans vulnerable, but what made them extraordinary. The Haldraxians had scanned human DNA looking for weaknesses to exploit. Instead, they had found evidence of humanity's greatest strength, their connection to beings who had once shaped the very stars. It was not a weapon in the traditional sense. It was something far more powerful, potential. The potential to evolve, to understand, to transcend the limitations that bound most species to their origins. And as Nira watched the sun rise over this human colony, she understood that the galaxy was about to change in ways no one, not even the ancients themselves, could have fully predicted.